Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Activate.
Hello, how are you?
3 sweeter words were never spoken.
That's probably not true.
That's probably true,
Yeah.
yes. It's been a minute since we've done Activate. Thank you all for joining this live broadcast.
And it is live. We are here in real time. You are watching. If you're going to take the time out of your day to spend with us, we're going to do the same thing for you, which also means there will be opportunities to answer questions during the course of this presentation. Otherwise, it's just no different than a video you could have hit play on.
That's right. I checked the registration early this morning. There were a lot of people, in order of 3x the amount of people that we usually have at these events. So it probably bears repeating what this is, what the intention is today. Obviously, we are going to be launching new products and solutions from Q-SYS, but we like to think of this as more than that. It's an opportunity for us to talk about things that are happening in our industry, to provide some thought leadership insights to the trends that we're seeing. And quite frankly, it is an opportunity for you to connect directly with us, ask questions, get your answers, and connect with each other, quite frankly.
While you're watching this, if you would rather listen to us not speak with our own voices and have someone else speak for us in maybe a different language, you can go to the translation tab on the window you're browsing on and then click on the headphone icon. And that way you can choose a different language so that you don't need to listen to me anymore for the rest of your life.
I wish that I had that live implanted in my brain.
Patrick is the only person who has to listen to me for the rest of his life.
That's true. Let's dive right into what to expect after the broadcast. I'll acknowledge that this is going to be a longer broadcast, but I would highly encourage you to stick to the end because that's kind of where the rubber meets the road in terms of getting really, really good, deep, one-on-one answers questioned by our thought leaders. Here's a quick look at all of the people that are actively supporting this broadcast right now. Folks from all over the globe are answering questions live in the Q&A and in the chat. So again, if you walk away from this and don't get your questions answered via chat, we would encourage you to stay for a breakout session where you're going to be able to, if you want to, turn on your microphone, turn on your camera, ask your questions directly of your thought leader. So with that, I'm going to address a little bit of the elephant in the room and cite this phrase here, full stack AV platform. This was on every email, every invite, every social media post that you got in advance of this, in advance of Activate. And we want to dive in a little bit about what this means.
And this will also be useful for people who are maybe a little bit newer to Q-SYS, wanting a little bit of just a refresher of what Q-SYS is and where it's exploring in the future.
Yeah, effectively, a full stack AV platform is the technology ethos that we are assuming here at Q-SYS. We launched this idea back at a keynote presentation in Infocom. This will be the first time that all of the products and solutions that we're launching today are speaking directly to the tenets that this represents. The other thing that I will cite is this is what we see as kind of the future of AV and our industry. However, we're going to be speaking about the full stack AV platform through the lens of Q-SYS, but I would invite you to, in your brains, do a find and replace for the word Q-SYS in terms of full stack AV and apply it to whatever platform you might be considering using. Because again, these are the things that we believe are going to set you up for the future state of your system and the things that should be considered the next time you do invest in AV.
So what does all that mean? Let's
dive in. The first part of this should be pretty familiar. The idea behind a full stack AV platform is that, yes, it does tie data, devices, the connected cloud, all of which to serve the express purpose of tying actions and insights to real-time experience in the system.
Now, that's all made possible with a portfolio of native devices that are inherent within that system, that are designed to work together and they're tested to work together, whether those are touchscreens, amplifiers, loudspeakers, cameras, whatever it is, that is all within the same umbrella. And every core in our processing line uses the same operating system as well, which means that any engineer only has one software suite to learn, no matter what scale project they're working on.
But that's not to say that Q-SYS intends to make every device that you need for every system. Our intention is to create vehicles that you can bring in other third-party devices to complete and customize that system. And that is where Q-SYS Open comes into play. We have built this toolbox made with industry-standard protocols, things like HTML5, CSS, Lua. These are not things that we've invented, but we've pulled from industry standards so that you're not having to kind of like crawl through proprietary manuals to understand how it works because it's already being used throughout the world. And when you do need help, we provide a vehicle via Q-SYS communities to get help from around the world.
And then there are partnerships. So we have huge alliance partners, Google, Lenovo, Microsoft, Intel, Zoom, Dell. We have over 100 technology partners that we work with. So whatever installation you are working on, we are likely to have some sort of little magic gizmo that we've created to work with them to make your installation life easier.
And that is effectively what Full Stack AV is in a nutshell. We're going to dive into that center stack. We're going to look at that AV platform and better understand what that technology stack means and what you should be looking for in that system, starting with multimodal I/O. The idea behind this is that you should expect your system to be able to use the connected devices as data, raw data for insights and actions. It is effectively the building blocks for all of that insight. And then on the other side of the I/O, the O, you should expect that, again, your AV system is that last bastion of hope before that experience is delivered to the end customer. And so that kind of completes the multimodal I/O.
Next is the cognitive cloud. So you would expect to have an advanced cloud infrastructure to support your systems today for things like real-time monitoring and managing of your systems, but it also supports you for future capabilities, like incorporating AI, cognitive services, machine learning, anything that's going to help incorporate all of your devices in your ecosystem together.
And then right there at the center of the center is the Intelligent Platform OS. This is how we are delivering integrated audio, video, and control. No longer are you going to have to connect a separate audio processor from a video processor from a control processor, because it's already doing so automatically within the stack. The other thing, as Nate mentioned, all of our devices, all of our processors, all of our connected peripherals, they're all running the same OS, which is advantageous for a lot of reasons. It means that from a programming perspective, you're only overcoming one learning curve. And when you make an update, it does so at a centralized point. And then the other thing that should be noted is that every piece of communication that's happening between the cognitive cloud and the multimodal I/O is being governed and traffic copped by that integrated platform OS. And that's not just within that stack. It means everything connected to your AV system. This means that you're reducing the number of subsystems that are governing the totality of your system. It means that you're removing points of failure at an exponential level, by the way. And ultimately, it gives your system the best chance to deliver a holistic experience for the end user and effectively reduce the total cost of ownership of the system. If you want more information, that lower third should be saying qsys.com/fullstack to learn a little bit more.
All right, so we got some ground under your feet about our mentality and the way that we approach technology. If you were, getting any emails from us over the last couple of weeks, or you were looking at the LinkedIn posts or anything about this event, you probably figured out that we've got a lot of things to get through. It's huge. We got lots and lots of announcements, new products to announce. Some of them were late breaking. They just showed up in the last couple of days, so we kind of threw them into the agenda as well. So if you were expecting this to be 1 hour long, please do expect this to be a little bit longer. It's going to be about probably an hour and 15. Grab your coffee, ration out your caffeine, stick with us, cool? We got some really cool things at the end, by the way. Don't jump off early because you're like, I think I got it. No, we're saving the best for last.
So our boss, Jason Moss, is going to come out here and talk a little bit about one of those late breaking pieces. So Jason Moss, come on to the stage and tell us what we're going to learn.
Thanks, Patrick and Nate. Like you guys didn't have much of a choice. I've forced this into the script. We're doing this live. We want to get all of you the information that comes in right away. So as they mentioned, this is something we just learned and something we're really excited about. So bear with us a little bit because we want to maybe turn it over to a little recording from one of our good friends.
Hello, Q-SYS and everyone joining today's launch. My name is Rupam Jain, and I'm the VP of Research at Frost & Sullivan's Connected Work practice. Every year, based on our independent research, we identify technology providers who have a forward-looking vision and are among the leading innovators and disruptors in our industry. Today, I want to kick off your broadcast by sharing some very exciting news. I'm pleased to announce that the Q-SYS platform has received the Frost & Sullivan 2025 Global Technology Innovation Leadership Award. This recognition is based on the work that Q-SYS has done for its market-leading innovation, customer value enhancement, and excellent market execution. At Frost & Sullivan, we keep a close eye on emerging trends and opportunities. And in recent years, we have seen a big evolution in the market towards the high-impact spaces and high-performance workplace. This vision spans the entire work environment, from the lobby to the boardroom and all the spaces in between. And more importantly, this concept goes beyond traditional office spaces. It extends to hospitality, healthcare, education, retail, stadiums and event venues, and more. With its full stack AV platform, Q-SYS is leading the market in providing cutting-edge technologies that take a holistic approach to building spaces that not only drive productivity and efficiency, but also enhance employee experience and engagement. So congratulations to the entire Q-SYS team, and enjoy the rest of Activate.
Thank you, Rupam, and the entire Frost & Sullivan team. We are so honored and humbled to receive this award. It's been fantastic working with them, being able to talk about our technology. And we've been waiting for this Activate for a really long time. We are very excited to get all of the products, all the technology out to you because we love our technology. But what we really love the most is our customers. We are really building things that provide value that you can take to your employees, your customers, your guests, whoever is in your built spaces. And we encourage you to go to qsys.com/case studies. We will have a little bit, a case study later in the show, but we're doing all this technology, but it is all about the customers. So with that, we're gonna get you to the technology. So it's my honor to introduce my good friend, Jatin Shah, President of Q-SYS. Jatin, take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Jatin Shah, President of Q-SYS, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to Activate. Today is my third time at Activate, yet it feels very different for me personally and for Q-SYS. Nearly 15 years ago this week, I joined Q-SYS from outside of the AV world. My crash course began when someone said, "You'd better get yourself to something called InfoComm," a trade event where just 1 year prior, Q-SYS had launched a brand new platform called Q-SYS. Fast forward to today, in a few weeks, I'll return to InfoComm, this time as the chairman of the board of AVIXA, our industry's leading trade association, and also as a proud steward for Q-SYS as our platform takes its next grand step. Talk about coming full circle. Today's theme, Game Changers, isn't just a clever name of our event. It's in our DNA. 16 years ago, we dared to build an integrated AV platform on a standard IT backbone with a single operating system. We used that idea to transform huge venues, airport, government complexes, theme parks. Then we flipped the script in collaboration spaces, replacing tangled HDMI and USB with true network audio, video, and control. We kept changing the status quo. Network video, third-party control, cloud monitoring, the list just goes on and on. And all that accelerating innovation leads us here to the promise of a full-stack AV platform, turning AV data into insight, unifying user experiences, and ultimately protecting your investment with scale and future-proofing. Today, you'll see how that vision ties directly to each of the hardware and software announcements you're about to see. First, a brand new class of core processors with the long-awaited successor to our best-selling processor, Core 110F. All three run the same Q-SYS intelligent platform OS that you trust, and I can't wait for you to meet them. We'll start to unveil the roadmap to a truly cognitive cloud with Reflect, starting with richer visualization, deeper analytics, and everyday wins for our end users. You'll get a sneak peek at the new Q-SYS Designer software v10, arriving in just a few weeks. With that comes a whole new way to access our control engine. Well, it's a spoiler alert, no more control licenses. And then finally, you'll experience the next generation of Vision Suite, powered by a new native AI accelerator, new speaker spotlight technology, and a new 3D design tool that will save you time on both the design side and deployment side. I know it's a lot, right? Well, the stage is set, so let's get started. Patrick and Nate, take it away.
Let's do it.
All right.
Thank you, Jotin.
All right.
All right.
We just dive into it. Yeah. You saw what's coming, and now they want to see it. And one of those first things that Jotin just mentioned was the Core 110F, right? That has been some good bread and butter for a long time. It's actually its 10th anniversary coming up, which means that it's time to move on. Apparently, we are introducing a brand new core, and 3 new cores actually. But let's talk first about how the Core 110F came to be and how that means it's going to transition into its successor.
Yeah, this is a great inflection point. So what did we learn over the last 10 years with Core 110 and beyond? I think the first thing that I would cite is that the power is important, but scalability is equally important. Like anybody that knows the history of Q-SYS knows that we started in big systems. We took full advantage of those big Intel processors and worked in airports and stadiums and theme parks, and that's where that thrived. And by doing so, we were able to focus on the software side because the hardware side we were taking from industry pieces that already existed. But there was always the idea that we needed to scale down to other smaller systems, to other verticals. And when the technology community arrived at that moment, we were able to take full advantage of that technology.
But we didn't want to just have like a Me Too product, right? It was just like, oh, we'll take what we did and we'll just make it a little smaller. We wanted to make sure that it was really designed properly for that space, right? And so the Core 110F matched a lot of things that really made it perfect for those conference rooms where it was going into. Putting the analog I/O onto the back of the core rather than having it be a separate device. Having the USB bridging available right there in the core itself rather than somewhere else as well. Kind of fights against those USB constraints. The form factor was the right size to put into a conference room. Everything about this, and still being a full capable core, not reducing anything, but just scaling it for the area it's going to be best fit in was the mentality of that device, and we're gonna keep all of the things that made that good.
Yep. So the successor to the Core 110, as we've mentioned, we want to make sure that we take advantage of what was good and what we know worked, and then add on to it. This is not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. This is making sure that we learn from what we did and do better and bigger and more effective. In terms of the entire line, not just the successor to the Core 110, we wanted to make sure that we filled out our entire portfolio to make sure that there's a gradual gradation of power and I/O to make sure that when you're making your choice about your processor, you're making a right-sized choice. The other thing that we wanted to take into consideration is to make sure that we're being mindful of the time that we're in and the choices that we might have made in the past and where we were with our platform and bringing that up to speed. Jotin already mentioned it, spoiler alert, we're getting rid of that control license. Wow. Yay. And so we're gonna take a look at why we did that choice and what that means for you. And again, all of these 3 new cores that we're about to introduce fit right into the idea of that intelligent platform OS, all of them being driven by that single point.
Show them the core.
Show them the core.
Get it? All right.
So without further ado, I am excited to introduce you to the successor to the Core 110. We call it, oh man, I didn't vamp enough, the Core 24F. Yay! All of the chats are going wild. Okay, so 3 things, if you remember nothing about what we say in the next 3 or 4 minutes. The Core 24F represents twice the amount of processing power. It represents an upgrade to those onboard features that we all know and love about the Core 110. And lastly, of course, we're upgrading that I/O ability on the digital side. So let's flip this one around. Let's go from your left to right. 8 channels in, 8 channels out, 8 channels flex. So you get to decide what those 8 channels do. I'm hoping that there's a roar of applaud. The 8x8 GPIO that had to go away during the pandemic due to supply chain issues, 8x8 GPIO is back. Alongside that, RS-232. We've upgraded the AV to USB bridge with a USB-C port, and we've increased the number of network ports so that you can allow whatever kind of parsing that you want for QLAN versus your control data versus whatever kind of redundancy that you want to introduce to your system.
So those ports on the back are going to look really familiar to anyone who's already been working with the Core 110F, right? And that's by design. If you are going to be retrofitting a room and upgrading to the 24F, well, all the connections are still there, but we've got more processing power now, right? A lot of the audio channels on the network have become more digital over the years. So while there are still the analog connections, we are expecting you to be using more I/O on the network, which is why these stats are the way they are, which I'm blocking right over here, right? So like we said, 2 times the processing power of the Core 110F, which is about 4 times the processing power of a Core Nano. We've got an increase in the network I/O capacity from 128 by 128 to 160 by 160. You're all reading the stats behind me, so you're ahead of me here, right? AEC channels up to 24 from 16. That's at a 200 millisecond tail length. We've got increased Dante capacity, twice the Dante capacity, more peripherals, all the good stuff. The most important thing is right there. The screen on the front is back as well, right? So the screen that also disappeared during the pandemic. Once again, if you need to go up to that core and hit the ID button or cycle through, find the name, find the IP address, I'm very glad that one's back.
All right. So that literally would have been enough to designate a full activate.
Yeah, we're done.
But there are like 8 or 9 more things that we got to introduce. So
2 of them are cores.
the next thing that we're going to introduce is a full new tier of cores that are going to fill out that portfolio and address those medium to large size installations. We call it the X-Class.
So the X-Class, like Patrick just talked about, is designed to give you the proper options as you scale up from a room that could be appropriate from the 24F, go a little bit higher, then you're going to be using the Server Core X10. Now, the X10 and the X20R, which is the third one, these are both built on enterprise-grade server hardware, all right? So this is designed to do centralized processing rather than put the core in the room. It's going to live in a rack where everything's directed to, and then it manages all of the processing for your room, your multi-rooms, your floors, whatever it is. Now, obviously, they're all going to be using the same Q-SYS core operating system. The Core X20R is a little bit different. That one's built on a Dell server hardware. A little extra benefit for there.
This is the X10.
Oh, that's the X10. So you want stats first. Here's the X10 stats, network I/O 256 by 256. AEC channels go all the way up to 64. And Dante channels 128 by 128. And the X20R is the one that's built on the Dell server hardware. And one of the benefits of operating as the Dell server is that you get some of these more IT-focused features, such as a redundant power supply, which is what the R stands for in this instance. The 2 power supplies on the back, hot swappable, things for redundancy if your power happens to go down.
Okay, 3 new cores. All of the questions, I'm sure. We're going to address some of those questions right now by bringing somebody smarter than me and Nate onto the stage.
There's so many people. That's like most of the world.
That's true. That's a very good point. I'd like to welcome Mr. Scott Weiser. Come on. He is the Senior Product Manager for Audio, and he's going to tell us more about how these fill out the portfolio, and then talk a little bit about that spoiler alert. Here you go.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Nate. So I just want to let that sink in a little bit. 3 new cores. It's not every day that we get to launch a new core. Today we're launching 3 new cores at the same time. So we're super excited about it. We hope you're as excited as we are about it. And I want to spend some time diving a little deeper into how these 3 new cores change the core landscape. And so I'm going to use this table to help me out here. One of the things, as Patrick mentioned, one of the things we really focused on when we were developing these new cores is making sure that the new cores fit into the lineup in such a way that there's a smooth progression of specs, from the smallest core to the largest core, with no big gaps in between. And what that allows us to ensure is that there's always a right-sized core for every application. So regardless of your project, there's a core that has the right specs, the right capabilities, and hits the right price point for the budget of that project. Now, we don't have time to go through all these numbers in detail, so I'd encourage you to take a screenshot, take a look at our website when we get this updated, and just familiarize yourself with this new landscape. Think about some projects that you've got coming up, and think about which core might fit best for that project, because it might be a core that's different than you're used to using. And to that end, many of you are probably looking at this table and saying, there's a lot of cores that I'm really used to seeing in a table like this that are not there, like the Core 110F, the Core 510i, the Core 610. And so obviously, since we're launching a bunch of new cores today, we're also going to be transitioning from those new cores from the old cores to the new cores. So let me talk a little bit about how this product transition is going to work over the coming months. So as we've already introduced, Core 24F is intended to eventually replace Core 110F. But I want to be clear, that's not something that's going to happen immediately. We're committed to making sure that Core 110F is available through the end of calendar year 2025. And that's going to give us a nice 6 or 7 month transition where both Core 110F and Core 24F will be available at the same time. You'll be able to choose which one is best for you during that time. When it comes to Core 510i and Core 610, there's a little bit of a different story there. We've already announced end of life for Core 510i. We're announcing end of life for Core 610 today. And we have essentially a finite amount of those units that we can sell, and we can't really make anymore. So our plan is to continue. They're both still available today, but they'll be available while supplies last. And we expect both of those cores to last until around July or August, depending on exactly how quickly they sell. So the Core 610 will be replaced by server cores, Server Core X10, Server Core X20R. All three of the new cores will be shipping in June, so next month. So it's coming right up. All right, so that is the transition plan. Let's change gears a little bit and talk about software licenses. It's a big topic. So we're releasing Q-SYS Designer version 10.0. We're going to have a lot more details in this broadcast about what's included in that. One of the things we're including in that, though, are some major software licensing changes. So before we dive into the details of exactly what we're changing, let's talk a little bit about why we're changing these things. And primarily, it comes down to that we've been listening to you. We've talked to thousands of you about your experience with software licenses, and we've heard some common themes. We've heard that sometimes it can be confusing to know which license you need. Sometimes it's easy to forget to order the license that you need to get the functionality you want. And ultimately, we've heard that there are some types of functionality that many of you would prefer to just be built into a core by default, have the cost of that functionality built into the cost of the core, and not have to worry about a separate line item. So we've taken that feedback, and we're going to be making changes to 3 different license types: control licenses, scaling licenses, and multi-track playback licenses. So let's dive into the details of those 3 changes, beginning with control licenses, because this is probably the most exciting one. And as has already been spoiled a couple times by some folks before me, control becomes intrinsic in Q-SYS 10.0. That means that any core running 10.0 or newer does not need a UCI deployment license to deploy UCIs, user control interfaces, to a touchscreen, and does not need a scripting engine license to use the Lua scripting capabilities of the core. So why are we making this change now? Well, it used to make a lot more sense to have control as a licensable feature. Early on in the life of that feature, not everyone was ready to use Q-SYS control, and it made sense that you can pay for it when you use it and not pay for it when you don't use it. Today, we've noticed that somewhere around 80% of the cores we sell have scripting and UCI licenses attached to them. So we talked about it, we made the decision. It no longer makes sense for us to burden our customers with the additional steps of purchasing and installing these licenses, and we're just going to include it in every core going forward. In order to make this change, we also need to build the cost of that functionality into the base cost of the core, and that is something we're going to be doing. But I want to be clear, the cost that we're going to be building into the cores is actually less than today's cost of a scripting and UCI license. So for the 80% of you that use scripting and UCI with every project that you do, this is actually going to be a price decrease. For the 20% of you that are not using scripting and UCI all the time, this is probably a great opportunity to reevaluate whether there's some value in Q-SYS control that you can take advantage of. So that's control. We can move on to scaling licenses. For those of you that are not familiar with scaling licenses, we offer scaling licenses for some of our cores, not all of them, that allow us to basically upgrade the capabilities of that core. And so the big announcement today is we are not going to be offering scaling licenses for any of the new cores that we've announced. So Core 24F, Server Core X10, Server Core X20R will always ship fully capable out of the box with no license required. Now, that doesn't mean we're getting rid of scaling licenses. Any core that has scaling licenses already will continue to have them. So Core Nano, Core 8 Flex, Core 610, those licenses are still available. But going forward, we don't intend to offer scaling licenses for future cores. And if we dive in a little deeper onto Core Nano and Core 8 Flex specifically, those cores actually have two different scaling licenses available. There's a commercial scaling license and a collaboration scaling license. And to further simplify our licensing portfolio here, we're going to actually combine those two scaling licenses together into just a single scaling license for Core Nano and Core 8 Flex. And that single license will have the same capabilities as both of the previous licenses combined. So we hope that that reduces any confusion about which license you need to get for those two cores. The final change that we're going to be making is something called stackable licenses. So we're creating a kind of a new license type where you'll be able to install the same type of license on the same core. Multiple copies of that license will stack on top of each other, and their channel counts will essentially add together to get to the desired channel count. So the first license type we're going to be doing this with is multi-track playback. We hope to expand this to more license types soon, so stay tuned for that. One quick note, there are some of our older cores that require media drive upgrades to expand their multi-track playback capacity. This license change does not change that requirement. They still need those media drive upgrades. But I do want to note, all the cores that we launched today, Core 24F, Server Core X10, Server Core X20R, will always ship with high speed and high capacity media drives. So they don't need any media drive upgrades to do multi-track playback. And in fact, we won't even offer any media drive upgrades for those cores. All right, so that's what I had to say about cores and licensing. I'll bring Patrick and Nate back up to the stage here, and we'll see if we've got any questions in the chat that we can answer for you at this juncture.
Scott, I just checked Reddit. They are organizing a ticker tape parade in your honor.
Very good.
I guarantee you there's already 4 threads thanking you for everything you just said. But there are still probably a lot of questions. We dropped a lot of bombs. And as I mentioned earlier, we're here to answer some of those, the hottest topics that are kind of floating around on that thread. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Jason Kelly, our senior product marketing manager, who's been one of the people answering all of those questions. And he's going to tee us up with a couple of the themes that he's seeing.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, guys. So a couple common questions we're having. One is, for Scott, a lot of people asking about 96 kilohertz support on these new cores. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, that's 96K is a feature that has been asked about for quite a long time for us. And I guess all I would say at this point is we're taking it seriously. It's a feature that we know is valuable in certain applications, and stay tuned.
What else you got, Jason?
Yeah, so how long do we typically offer software support for discontinued cores? How long will customers expect their cores to continue being supported?
Great question. So I think you can probably get a sense for that by looking at the cores that are losing software support today. Those cores were discontinued many, many years ago, especially when it comes to a core like the 110F, where there are so many in the field. Our intention is to support that core in software for as long as we possibly can, absolutely for years to come.
Great. Yeah. And one last question on licensing. A lot of folks just want some clarity on whether the new or with the control licenses going away, if they can still get free control on current cores, not just the new ones.
Also a great question. So to get the free scripting and UCI functionality, the core does need to be running 10.0 or higher. But if your core is running a lower firmware version, we are going to have a system that will essentially generate a free license for you. Even if you bought this core 3 years ago, you'll still get free scripting, free UCI. We want everyone using control, and we're just going to give it away at this point.
You get control. You get control. Exactly. You get control.
Let us give you free things. Yay.
All right, Scott, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you have more questions for Scott, he will be one of the people that are joining those breakout sessions, and he's probably going to go grab a laptop right now and join in on the chat. So feel free to join. We're going to keep going.
Yep, we got more. We got so much more. We got so much more.
We talked, I think one of the most exciting things that we talked about during that kind of full stack conversation was the cognitive cloud and how this creates a path for our future. And I'm going to bring Christopher Janes on here. He's our CTO, and he's going to fill in those gaps for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Hi, I'm Christopher Janes. I am the CTO of Q-SYS, and I guide our product development, technology, and innovation teams. Before we dive into all the fantastic features that the cloud is going to introduce, it's obvious that that cloud is going to get connected to that fantastic lineup of cores that we just talked about. What I want to do is take a step back and set the stage for our broader vision for the cloud and what it really means. So when we say cognitive cloud, what does that mean and how are we going to get there? So as a reminder, that full stack AV really has 3 components to it. There's that multimodal I/O. That's the eyes and the ears that produce like really rich data coming out of that space. The controller at the edge, that is our core lineup. And the actuators in that space that can interact together to create new and exciting experiences. When you take that edge core and connect it to the cloud, you have an opportunity to build a secure cognitive layer that is regionalized, it has data integrity, and it supports the technology dreams that we have to really enable experiences when we come together in our built spaces. So I encourage us really, when we think about the cloud, to go beyond that traditional sort of monitoring, management, and live status light sort of readout. We want to set a North Star that's well beyond that. The cloud really is technology that's unconstrained by the traditional on-premise hardware. So when that happens, you are free now to dream about how we leverage all the innovations and the technology roadmaps that drive us to an intelligent cloud layer into the room for a new experience. So imagine a Q-SYS platform, for example, that's really bidirectionally connected to the cloud continuously, low latency, data integrity flowing to that cloud platform. And in that cloud, you have the ability to analyze with true machine intelligence, drive inference so you can maybe predict issues before they even arise in that space. You could suggest efficiencies and even action in that space. So imagine now a space where we're able to start to address some of those really grand challenges in the AV market as a community because we have had the ability to build that full stack AV platform. This allows us to really react to end user needs in real time in ways that you just haven't even been able to envision before. So that's a North Star that's quite broad. If today you're a Reflect user, you know that it's already a solid cloud management platform. It has some really, really great features. But you've also been asking us to accelerate our roadmap and take us on the journey towards that vision, where the cloud is truly a cognitive and intelligent partner in this space. So we needed to take a step back and build a foundational architecture that had to be put in place so that Reflect could drive towards that aspirational future, okay? So that took a little bit of bravery and patience. Bravery from us, patience on your part, while we went back and re-architected components to prepare for this new generation of AV intelligence. That 10.0 journey that we have been on has been very interesting. So we had 30 different Scrum teams working to deliver over 400 components. And we really had to go through this journey of addressing new features, advanced features, and known issues to get them out of the way so we had a solid infrastructure to be now poised to go after this ability to leverage intelligence in the cloud. That represented over 35,000 developer hours focused on stability and the future. So we were actually following the same development process many of you have heard me talk about before in the 9.13 release that focused heavily on stability, and that process really resulted in one of our most stable releases yet, and I think you'll see that that process continues. So the first outcome of this new architecture is really the decoupling of the Reflect roadmap and its ability to release features to you, like you've asked for us to accelerate, from the designer development cycle that we will continue to go along. So that frees us now to pursue, with energy and alacrity, this new vision. And I encourage you to think about these features that we're going to talk about. I'm going to bring David Judy on here in a minute to talk about them as the tip of the iceberg for this journey. Because now we are positioned to go and build this cognitive cloud. David, do you want to come out and take them through the features?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it, man. Wow. So Chris's vision for the cognitive cloud is an inspiring look at how intelligence and automation are becoming central to the way we manage technology. Not just responding to problems, but anticipating needs and delivering smarter experiences. So I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about how the momentum of that vision is already driving and shaping the future of Reflect. Now, our current roadmap is all about data, how we capture data, how we structure it, and how we turn it into action. First, we started this journey earlier this year when we made the Reflect API free for all accounts. This opened the door to deeper integrations, smarter automation, and just more insights across your environments. With our data and reports release that's coming up, we're making foundational changes to that reimagine the data structure of Reflect. So first, we're going to release some new visualizations that are going to provide more insights into your systems. I'm going to start by focusing on the parts you can see. So currently, you interact with Reflect through organizations, sites, and systems. That logical hierarchy you're used to is not going away. It's still important for the way you manage access in your systems and delegate accounts. However, we're introducing a new standards-based space ontology. This ontology will enable you to define and organize systems in a consistent, interoperable model. The model is designed to simplify integrations and better align the way your facilities, IT, and AV teams look at spaces and the technology in them. You'll see this first in new hierarchy views and a geospatial map view. The map view will deliver familiar interaction where you can zoom in on the map, see groups expand, see roll-ups of status throughout the hierarchy, navigate intuitively to systems around the globe or into the System Explorer. But the real magic is what's underneath the surface. By introducing a standard definition of space, we're creating a new language. This will be subtle at first, but over time it will become the foundation of how Reflect understands and interacts with the physical world. Next up is our System Explorer. Now, System Explorer is where you'll start to navigate using these new hierarchies. You can filter through various ways and analyze the health of your systems. This will provide an instant, searchable view into all of your systems. And at the system level, you'll see key metrics, configuration states, and current status of all your inventory items. You can filter by status, by tags, or maybe you just want to look at the most recent systems that you've viewed in Reflect. And at every level, you'll see a roll-up of real-time system status. This is the kind of tool that enables you to easily manage complexity at scale. Next is our system reliability view. Now, in system reliability, you'll see a time-based visualization of your system states. You can track uptime, faults and warnings over time. You can filter by status and view status changes through time. One of the use cases here is to look at the scope of an incident. So when you had an outage yesterday in a conference room, was that outage specific to that room? Or do you see that multiple rooms, maybe on the same floor connected to the same MDF, had an outage at the same time? Finally, we're introducing a live ranking. The live ranking is a mechanism for you to actively sort, filter, it's updated in real time, and start looking at how your systems are performing over time. Where does your technical team need to focus effort? So when you have some extra bandwidth with your technical teams, where should they be looking the most? Or reverse that sort and look at which space is going to be the most reliable? Which room do you have that never has any issues that you want to put that special guest in next week? These changes are just the beginning. So there'll be more data and reports features coming later this year. And this is all possible because of that foundational data model we talked about earlier. So what's the big picture? You heard Chris's vision for the cognitive cloud. We're building that future now. This isn't just about new views or dashboards. It's about re-architecting Reflect for the future. A future of intelligent automation, seamless integration, and real-time insight. These are the building blocks. And with the full stack capabilities of Q-SYS, we're ushering in a new era of smart, connected AV environments. Now I want to welcome Bonnie to the stage, who's going to chat with a special guest. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So we've heard a little bit about the vision of Cognitive Cloud, and we have heard the roadmap for Q-SYS Reflect. But about a year ago, we released a robust new feature set in Q-SYS Reflect free tier. There's been a ton of amazing adoption for this, and now we have some of our first super users coming on to talk to us about what the value of Q-SYS Reflect free tier can manifest as. So we have West Valley Mission Community College. It's a community college district in the Silicon Valley. And this is a institution that services over 20,000 students. And I have Joel and Zane coming on board to tell us a little bit about their Q-SYS journey. Welcome, Joel. Welcome, Zane. So glad to have you
Thanks
here.
Thanks for allowing us to join you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So to kick us off, can you give us the elevator pitch of what is your journey with Q-SYS in general on your two campuses?
Yes, so I joined the district about 4 years ago, and at that time we were using another AV manufacturer and just looking at how unsustainable it was. We oversee more than 250 AV systems, and that crosses over 2 campuses and 21 buildings. So we decided to migrate to Q-SYS. So now we're running 96 cores, and we have a relatively small team. And the main reason we made that decision was just the simplicity and deployment of these systems, and then just the overall manageability once they're stood up. Like I said, Zane and I have probably worked with nearly every AV vendor out there, and Q-SYS was by far the most efficient in terms of setup and management. And so it's made a huge benefit for my team, but also the end users.
And I mentioned earlier that you are Q-SYS Reflect free tier super users. How many spaces do you have connected currently?
Currently 96.
And tell me a little bit about the before state, the pre-Q-SYS Reflect free tier, and now how your day-to-day is running with it.
It was a little murky and dark before. I had an integration going that would flag an online spreadsheet and updates of people based on where the event came from, but it had its limitations. Nowadays, it's just a lot more visibility into everything and a lot less daily stress of, you can look at a glance and see kind of how everything's doing.
Yeah, the promised land. And speaking of promised lands, you're not done yet. I'm sure you have more things that you're working towards. So what does the future hold for your district and Q-SYS?
Yeah, so we just rolled out a new task and ticketing system. So what we're going to do is use Reflect's API to connect to that system, so we can basically generate proactive alerts. So even before users, let us know there are problems, it's going to be assigned to specific staff based on where they're located. Then what I want to start to look at is our usage data now that we have 96 cores, on how they're being used and how often, and that can help inform designs for the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. Really appreciate hearing from you.
Thank you.
And so we have, one story of Q-SYS Reflect free tier, but there's no reason that their story cannot be yours. You go to qsys.com/reflect, and there's nothing stopping you from signing up today.
Okay, Bonnie. Thank you so much. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your time. We mentioned Q-SYS Designer Software V10 is on its way. It will be arriving early June. And obviously, all of the new products that we're talking about today are basically included in this release. Chris Janes already mentioned the huge lift that's coming on the back end of all of the things that are setting us up for the future. So that is arriving. But that doesn't mean that there's not real software-based innovation and features that you're going to be able to grab immediately when that software comes live. And we're going to take a minute to talk about those things right now.
Yeah, there's some cool things coming out.
First and foremost is Android-based UCI. Now,
What?
the reality is, obviously, we're not going to be offering this download. You're going to go to the App Store and you're going to download that.
Yeah, this isn't necessarily part of 10.0, but
Correct.
it coincides chronologically.
But for the longest time, all we offered was iOS support, and this offers, again, another solution that is going to be available for your users to control Q-SYS with. Secondly, there were some features that we were still working to address in the NV21HU in terms of its ability to bridge audio via that DP alt mode. That has been corrected. That is now available in 10.0. And lastly, we are going to support SMPTE 2110 audio and NMOS control. For those that are not aware, this is a broadcast protocol. So this is, again, allows Q-SYS to go into more installations of different verticals.
We got a couple of cool new little gadgets and gizmos in the control and UCI world. One of them is the Flex Box. So the Flex Box is sort of a graphic tool that you'll pull from the UCI toolkit in Designer, and you apply basically a region on your UCI, much the same way that you might do with a group box. But you can then populate things into the group box or into the Flex Box, and the Flex Box will automatically just organize and justify them based on your parameters, like how many rows, how many columns do you want, what's the gutter size you want between those objects. And so if you've got 3 items you want to throw in your UCI, you just throw them on the Flex Box and it'll automatically distribute them for you rather than you have to place them. That is, wow, that is a 20-year-old reference to cooking.
You're welcome.
I'm glad you're on top
Everybody.
Now, if you added, you wanted something else on there, yeah, you add it later on, and it'll just automatically readjust things for you. That's cool during the design process, but what's really cool about the Flex Box is it also does it dynamically while the system is running. So if you are like programmatically making a button go invisible with like block controller or text controller or something like that, maybe you've got like an HDMI cable, and when it's not connected, you don't want a user to see the HDMI 1 as a source because there's nothing connected to that. You would normally make that button maybe go invisible. So the Flex Box will react to that, and it will also reorganize the remaining visible objects within it live in real time so that there's not just like an empty hole where that object once was. We also have a couple new components called the when and the sequencer. Again, these are components that if you're doing scripting, you're probably already handling it in a certain way. But if you're not doing scripting, we like to give you these little control components that let you accomplish things without having to write any code. So the sequencer is very similar to a control delay, where you have one input come in and then multiple outputs go out based on certain time delays. But the sequencer, you can specify how long each output is on before it goes off again, and very importantly, you can also stop it so that if you need to cancel that sequence, you can prevent the remaining outputs from going out, which you couldn't really do with a control delay. And then there's the when component. The when component basically says, hey, when X is true, I'm going to do a thing. And in this case, you can decide, what days something should occur on, what times it should occur on. Again, you could have done that by grabbing like the date time information out of a component and then scripting, hey, when this happens, do it. You can also do it with administrator, but this means you can do it without opening administrator, without doing any coding. It's just one more little ease asset that you can just do real quick without doing any more complicated stuff.
The next round of things that we're going to talk about are not major features, but what they are examples of how we are listening to customers, specifically on communities. So this next one, effectively, there were a lot of people on communities that were asking for just to put the control name from the UCI button that exists in the properties panel onto the button itself. Right now, when you open up a UCI, it just says button, gain, mute, invert, and there wasn't...
Button, gain is my favorite childhood poem, actually.
Oh, why don't you recite
button, gain, that's how it goes.
That. Okay.
You'll also notice in the toolkit, there's new icons, so you can get more colorful visibility as to what all these things are as well. So toolkit's getting upgraded.
Yep. The last thing that we're going to talk about is in beta. We're acknowledging that this is a beta, but it is a means of controlling Q-SYS outside on a web browser. So we're enabling remote control via the WebSocket. So this is similar to your ability currently to control Q-SYS via protocols like Q-SYS, where you have a third-party control device that you want to trigger control into Q-SYS. This opens up the opportunity for you to do so in a web browser experience. And effectively what this means is that if Q-SYS happens to not be able to deliver a specific experience that you want your end user to have when controlling Q-SYS, you could probably then just build it in HTML and CSS and then have that web browser connect to Q-SYS and trigger that control. Really, really opens up the possibility for what that end user experience looks like. I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about Asset Manager and the good work that our technology developers are doing. Just in 2025 alone, we introduced 50 new plugins, and we've done updates to over 95 of those existing plugins, which means that we are trying to make things easier for the people that are deploying commonly used solutions in the field, and this program is proof positive of that. One of the things that I would like to focus on specifically is our partner Panopto. Now, for those of you that are not aware, Panopto is a software-based solution for lecture capture. And this is a plugin that came out recently that allows you to control triggering the record and doing some scheduling pieces. A very cool plugin, a very cool partner. I suggest that if you're in higher education, you're probably already using Panopto. And if you're using Q-SYS, go on to Q-SYS Designer software, go on to the Asset Manager, download this. And with that,
we still got one more big thing.
All right, we're an hour in.
Yeah.
We got about 15 minutes left. We've kind of saved the most exciting. Actually, I think they're all equally exciting.
But this one visually is really cool.
Yeah.
You may have seen a little bit of it earlier during Jatin's speech. It's pretty exciting. It's an upgrade to Vision Suites and the way that we are handling presenters and speakers. Patrick, why don't you catch them up a little bit on what Vision Suite is, first of all, before we get into the nitty-gritty?
Yeah, let's acknowledge the fact that some of you might not know what Vision Suite does right now. The goal of Vision Suite is to do three basic things. To take that in-room experience and untether the presenter from the podium and allow that person to walk about and still be captured for the remote side. Speaking of which, we want to level the playing field for the remote participant, making sure that whomever is speaking, whether that be the presenter or any of the participants that they're captured, wherever they're sitting in the room. And then the reality is that a lot of the solutions are dependent on the person that's deploying it. And so we don't want to forget about that person that may need to toil away at that system before it is up and running. We want to make sure that the conditions are set for an easy deployment, an easy design, and that's effectively what we've done with this latest iteration of Vision Suite.
So, what is it? Well, you're familiar probably already with presenter spotlights. That's a little bit of what Patrick talked about. Following a presenter move around the room. We'll show you a little bit of that in just a moment. But something that is new is the idea of the speaker spotlight. Now, you may have seen some installations we did recently where we talked about ACPR to highlight different speakers that are in the room. This speaker spotlight is a completely different technology that is going to blow your minds, I promise. It's unbelievably cool. It's made possible with the Vision Suite Designer. That is not a new software application. That is actually something that you open up within Q-SYS Designer, and it will open up a new window within Designer that lets you create all of these magnificent things we're about to show you. And also introducing the Vision Suite VSA 100, the AI accelerator. That is the piece of hardware that makes this all possible. So we're going to talk about all of those things. But first, again, let's just focus in and talk about what the presenter spotlight is and what speaker spotlight is.
Okay. That man is handsome right there. Not you, Nate, me. This is effectively the experience for presenter tracking. Again, you're able to create very cinematic, dynamic views for those end users. That technology is following that presenter, and it is set apart from the rest of the field in that it is not just tracking people's faces, but rather it's organizing all of the people in the room, and it's assigning numbers and variabilities on whether they are human or not, and using 16 points of data on each person's body to determine with AI where they're going next. It also means, you saw it a moment ago, that the presenter is able to turn around because it is not predicated by its view of face or eyes, because it's got other points of data to look for.
One of the cool things you can do with that presenter tracking is that you can automate certain things to happen as the presenter moves into certain areas. Here we have an example where we set up a purple zone by the whiteboard, and if the presenter happens to move towards that zone, you can trigger something else to occur. So for instance, here we have a less handsome goblin-faced presenter, and he's walked next to the whiteboard, and in that area, we automatically tell the cameras to swap to a static angle that's focused on the content of the board rather than watching that troglodyte meander randomly across the room. So that is one more element of having the triggers available. That means that when that presenter walks into the room, you can automate anything to happen. Their sheer existence in the room could start the presentation. It can turn on the presenter spotlight functionality, turn on the lights, set up the microphones, get the displays on with the right content. All of those things can be automated by the simple act of existing or not existing. They walk away and the lights will turn off. This room will reset. All of this makes your room incredibly easy to automate without anyone having to push any buttons.
Okay, that is Speaker Spotlight. Let's talk a little bit about what we've iterated with, that's Presenter Spotlight. This is Speaker Spotlight. Information that it's gathering from the ceiling microphone, that XYZ coordinates, and making choices of which camera to switch to at any given point. Now, with ACPR, or Automatic Camera Preset Recall, this required a designer to decide where in the room likely places where people were going to sit. These were choices that had to be made, probably weeks and months before anybody got into that room, which obviously can create a little bit of a problem if you introduce a little bit of variability. So hold on to that idea. Here's an example of what it means. This is also an example of the idea behind a primary camera versus a secondary camera. So again, you don't want to see that camera switching in real time and giving people seasickness. The system identifies who's speaking and then gets the camera in position and does that switch automatically before the end user sees it. Again, this has all been in existence with Vision Suite for the last couple years. What we are introducing today is the idea of chance. The idea of improvisation when a presenter comes into the room and might notice that the room isn't in the state that they expected it to be. Or rather, maybe the presenter, halfway through decides, well, let's just rearrange the table. Well, let's do some breakout sessions. Everybody move your chairs and table and move the room around. In prior scenarios, this would have broken the system. It would have broken all of those presets that exist. But now with Speaker Spotlight technology, it means that you're able to rearrange the furniture in the room. You're rearranging where people are sitting. People can shift in their chairs, and the system will automatically adjust for any kind of variability based on where their voice is being picked up by that microphone and fusing that with information that we're already gathering from the camera. So big ideas. The other thing that we're introducing is the idea that we don't want false information, data, noise that might be happening somewhere in the room to erroneously trigger.
Keep going.
What are you doing?
I'm making my snack. Tell them about it.
I think Nate is hosting a masterclass in drawing focus. Thank you, Nate. I think choking is a real thing, so don't do that. You're scaring me. What this illustrates is, again, there are often times in rooms where there's noise that is happening. You don't want that noise to accidentally trigger and draw focus away from the presenter. And so this voice activity detection makes sure that only voices are going to trigger those things. And with that, let's actually put all of these things that we just talked about together in one system and show you a demonstration. We actually taped this the other day. In a see, your choices have consequences, Nate.
You're going to have to talk about this part.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. No problem. Just down the way, about 200 yards that way, is our brand new Costa Mesa Experience Center. We installed this, and we had the person that runs that, Bart Wood, do a little demonstration with a couple of our friends. So let's take a look at that.
All right. I'm so happy to host you guys here today in the Costa Mesa Experience Center. You know, this facility has been a culmination of multiple cross-functional teams coming together over the last couple of years and planning to create what I think is one of the best experience centers available in the U.S. today.
Yeah, what is this room called? It's really impressive. I'm liking the layout of all the lighting, and just everything in here creates a really cool environment for everyone.
Yeah, this room is called the Fireside Chat Room. When we set out on this room, the journey of building this space, what we wanted to be able to create was a very intimate space where we could have a business meeting environment, but still maintain screen equity during that meeting. It also serves as an extra space for us to do some filming in as well.
I was wondering if you could share more about the other rooms in the Experience Center. I got a little lost on my way here today, so I'd love to learn about what the other rooms are.
Absolutely. Next door, we're anchored by our training facility. This is an 18-seat facility. It's state-of-the-art. You get to put your hands on the technology and work with the technology while you're learning. So we're really excited about that. We have our Microsoft Signature Room across the way. And then our common spaces throughout the facility have experience built into them as well.
I'm really excited about the training. I'm fairly new to the company. I'm like a sponge to everything, so I just want to learn. So I'm hoping there are some options maybe you can share that I can look into.
Absolutely, we've been really excited about the training journey that we've gone on. But before we get started and talk about that, why don't we rearrange the room and get a little bit more collaborative in here so that we can see each other. So like I said, over the last few months, we've gone on a training journey to really help expound upon our curriculum offering. So in our curriculum now, we have our Control and UCI Fundamentals class, our Intermediate class, and then, of course, our Advanced Scripting class. Yes, sir?
Yeah, just a quick question about that new control training. You know, I've taken the old control training and the Q-SYS level 1 and level 2 and even the sales training too. But I'm just curious if that's going to be just more of a recap of what I've already learned.
Yeah, I have a similar question, but with the Avixa credits that we earn with all of those classes. So I took the old control training as well. Will those Avixa credits that I've already earned still be worth anything, even though we replaced all of the control training with a new series?
Yeah, those are great questions. So, you know, we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback from people that have previously taken our control offering and then gone on to take these new classes. We really expounded upon the information and we created a much more mature curriculum.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So, I mean, did you notice how, they were able to rearrange the tables in the middle of that and it still worked? No one was touching any buttons to drive that. So that wouldn't have been possible using, fixed static camera presets in the past. This is all done magically, which we're about to show you how.
Yeah, we're gonna break the first rule of magic and actually show you how that works. To do that, we're gonna bring Matt Lefebvre on, who's gonna take us through new Q-SYS Designer and Accelerator.
Awesome. Yeah, so what you saw, Vision Suite entirely automated. What's incredibly cool is every single camera switch, every single camera movement, room automation was completely automated by our AI. The people were able to walk into the room, just start using it, and Vision Suite took it from there. And I don't know about you, I think that's pretty stinking cool. But let's talk about how we did that, okay? So we're gonna start with the hardware. As we mentioned, the Vision Suite, do the thing. The VSA 100 is our new AI accelerator. This is a single rack unit enterprise grade accelerator designed to go in a data room. It's just a network peripheral. And this device is replacing the SVS1 and SVS4, our Vision Suite servers. Now, if you happen to have an SVS1 or SVS4, don't freak out because our software, as part of a future release will soon be backwards compatible, meaning your SVS4 or SVS1 will be upgradable to run Vision Suite native and the new software we're about ready to show you. And without further ado, let's talk about the new software because this is where the magic really happens. So this is it. This is Vision Suite Designer. It's our new software. It's a native component within Q-SYS. And this tool facilitates 3 primary elements. It helps you design and program and commission a Vision Suite system. Through one single unified interface, you're able to do all of those things. Let's talk about the design process a little bit. Okay, so as AV designers, you are used to starting your design with an equipment plan. It's a great way to sort of anchor yourself in how the space is going to be oriented and used. And with Vision Suite, you start the exact same way too. You import a floor plan, you scale the floor plan, you can start bringing equipment in, and you can bring your cameras in, your microphones, you can bring in displays and other furniture elements. It's a way for you to really start to visualize the design and how everything is coming together. Now, after you've done your equipment plan, you're going to import or insert what we call trigger zones, and those were mentioned earlier. That's what you see on the floor, these big rectangles. Now, what's cool about these trigger zones, there are different types, but essentially what you're able to do is you're able to monitor areas of a room for certain events, and then you're able to trigger automations based on what's happening in different areas of the room. And that's pretty powerful. It really enables a pretty intelligent programming experience. And that's what you see on the right-hand side of the menu. So the programming is very intuitive. It's based on drop-down menus, button presses. It's very simple, very easy to use, but very powerful. The best way to think about programming a Vision Suite system is pretend that you're a movie director. Because really, at the end of the day, when you're designing a Vision Suite solution, you are directing or producing this meeting experience. So just as a director might say, well, if somebody's talking from this area of the room, it's best to get a shot with that camera. That's the best perspective. Or if somebody walks to a whiteboard, what do we want to do with the lighting or the camera framing? If someone's walking around, do we want cinematic tracking of that person? Just as you would think through as producing the output of a meeting room experience, it's very similar with Vision Suite. It's a very fun and creative process to design a system. Now, up to this point, you've done everything off-site. We know that being on-site is very expensive, and Vision Suite Designer helps minimize the amount of time you spend on-site. So all of the design and programming is done off-site, and then once you get to site, you really go into a tweaking process. So let's talk about how we commission a system. You first start by calibrating it. Up to this point, you have your virtual model. Now you have a physical room, and we need to correlate those 2 elements together. So our engineers came up with this automagic way of pointing cameras at markers you place on the wall, and now your system automatically just sort of updates itself. So all of your equipment moves to exactly where it's installed in the real world, and that is incredibly powerful, especially when you move into the process of tweaking and commissioning your system. So before I show you what that looks like, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to think about your ceiling microphones as ears, your overview camera as eyes, and just as the human brain sort of takes your ears and eyes and combines that information into a single understanding of what's happening, Vision Suite's AI does it the exact same way. We take data from the ceiling microphones, data from your overview cameras, and we bring it together, and then our AI model has a single understanding of what's happening in that space. And what's particularly cool is this visualization tool that we give you to help show you what the AI is thinking. Because when designing and commissioning these systems, it's very hard to understand what's going on without the right visualization tools, and we've put a lot of energy into making sure it's very clear. So what you're seeing here, this is the fireside room. This is the room where you just saw that demo, and you see all these little person dots moving around. The AI has identified all of these as people, and it's tracking exactly where everybody is in the room and who's talking and so on. But what's particularly cool is there are these orbs around each person. And what those orbs are telling you is that's the AI's level of certainty that it knows exactly where a person is located. So if the orb is bigger, we're less certain, and the camera framing goes wider. If the orb is smaller, we're much more certain, camera framing goes tighter. Incredibly powerful stuff to help inform your commissioning agent what the AI understands, and then you can go from there. So that's Vision Suite. We're super excited. We can't wait to see what awesome, fun stuff you do with it. The software is launching at 10.0, and the VSA 100 will be shipping in July. Patrick and Nate.
Great. Thank you, Matt. We have reached the conclusion of this part of the presentation. On behalf of everybody from Q-SYS that put on this production, Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the breakouts. Bye now.